Good evening, everyone. The meeting will come to order, and welcome to the first meeting of April. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice of compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's office in preparation of the Council Annual Meeting Notice dated January 3rd, 2019, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements. Please be advised that fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Ms. Fox. Mr. Gould.
Here.
Ms. Little.
Here.
Mr. McTiernan. Mr. Vartan.
Here.
President Naidu.
Here. In case anyone is wondering actually why two of our council members are missing, both of them have children who are performing currently at Carnegie Hall. Yes. So there is no better excuse than to do that, right? So, yeah. We congratulate all of the students in Summit High School who are currently performing in Carnegie Hall. What a great honor. So, now on to our Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to call up Yolanda Fandora and Pamela Zavi to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notices regarding closed session, hearings, and comments?
A closed session meeting as authorized by state statute was announced and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30, and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on Hometown TV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, spell your last name, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or council member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the City Clerk's office at rlicatis@cityofsummit.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes or so in length. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to minutes for approval. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of regular and closed session of March 19th, 2019?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Okay, reports, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone, and happy April. First, the City of Summit is continuing its successful unpaid college internship program for the 12th consecutive year. Applications will be accepted beginning April 1st through the 19th, and interviews will be scheduled in late April for selected applicants. More information is available on the city website, cityofsummit.org. Please join us for the first City Hall open house on Thursday, April 11th from 3 to 5 p.m. Citizens can learn about the roles of the various city departments and the valuable work initiated by community volunteers. Summit's first open house will certainly be a fun and interesting event. We have students involved through a common council, a mock common council, students from the high school, and there are 8th graders who have written an essay, How My Local Government Impacts Me and My Family, and the winner will get to be mayor for the day, at least in the afternoon. The applications are being accepted now for the Summit Police Department Summer Youth Academy. The applications are accepted through April 19th. This is the 5th season of the Youth Academy. There will be 2 one-week sessions for children's ages 11 to 14. Session 1 runs from July 22nd to the 26th, and Session 2 runs from the 29th of July to August 2nd. Both sessions will be held at the Summit Police Department from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. And they're not always on site. They go to various other locations. This will be my 4th summer being upstairs, listening to the kids down here with the officers, and it's really quite a great program, and the kids love it. I do believe Councilman Vartan is a graduate.
Yes, I am. Class number 1.
The program is designed to provide area youths with the opportunity to gain an understanding of the role of the police officer. So don't wait to submit an application, as this is a very popular program and space is limited. I just want to say again that we broke ground on the Summit Free Market a week or so ago, and we are still hoping to raise some more funds to help finish the building, or get it started and finish it. And then also, lastly, on Sunday evening from 6 to 8:30, the Summit Historical Society is holding its annual fundraising for to help to support their activities, and it's at the Summit Hotel. It's called A Taste of Summit, and it features all kinds of wonderful multicultural foods from the various restaurants and food shops throughout town. So that's 6 to 8:30 at the Summit Hotel. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On to our city administrator, Michael. Michael?
Council President, thank you. Good evening, everyone. The Summit PAL and the Department of Community Programs are hosting Summit's annual egg hunt at 1 p.m. on April 6th. Over 10,000 eggs will be hidden on the Village Green. There will be 3 separate events organized by age, toddler to age 8. Please plan to arrive at least 15 minutes early so you don't miss it. The rain date is April 7th. The Summit Municipal Golf Course is now open. Resident and non-resident memberships are available. You can register online at summitcommunityprograms.com or contact DCP to register by phone at 908-277-2932. The DEP, Division of Parks and Forestry, is providing 60,000 free tree seedlings to residents through the New Jersey Tree Recovery Campaign at distribution sites across 19 counties, beginning this past Saturday, March 30th, through Sunday, May 5th. Distribution site information can be found on our city website. In response to the New Jersey Smoke-Free Air Act, no smoking signs have been installed in all municipal parks and athletic facilities. Fines are $250 for a first offense, $500 for a second, and $1,000 for all other further violations. City of Summit Annual Earth Day Cleanup will be held Saturday, April 27th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Bryant Park and Martinsbrook Park. Walk-ins are welcome. The Spring Summit Free Market dates are April 27th and May 4th at 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Summit Transfer Station. You can find more information on Earth Day and the Summit Free Market on the city website. And lastly, Route 24 between Route 78 and Route 287 is scheduled for paving with intermittent lane closures beginning April 8th and continuing through September. Updates and information on any changes will be provided on the city website, Facebook, and Twitter as they occur. That's all I have for this evening. Council President, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't have necessarily a report to give right now. But there's a nice group of folks here. I assume many of you are here hopefully to hear the presentation for the Broad Street West redevelopment that our consultant's topology did. So I'd like to call upon Annie Hinderling and her folks, whoever wants to come up.
Good evening. Hi. Thanks for joining us. Thank you all for having us here again. As you mentioned, my name is Annie Hindenling. This is Phil Abramson. We prepared this redevelopment plan. That's been about 2 years from start to finish of what our involvement has been, largely driven by public outreach. I'm sure many of the people here and you all have heard a bit of what I'm going to be sharing with you today, but we want to make sure that we cover the entire scope of what we did and how we got here, because it's been really important to keep people informed and be transparent throughout this entire process. And I think more than any other client we've had, you all have been successful at doing that. Next slide. Quickly, I'm going to give you some background, then do a plan overview, and then go into what are potential next steps. This is a big plan. It covers a lot of stuff. I will try to be as concise as possible. Maybe you'll have to remind me to slow down. But there's a lot here.
I will do that.
I always think you're telling me to be quiet, and so I start whispering.
No, it's not quiet. Just
I know. I'm always like, oh, okay. Okay, so I'll try to slow down. But it's a lot to cover, and I'm very excited about it, and I'll try to be as continually, make the excitement contagious. Go ahead. So just to give you some context, the redevelopment area is pretty strategically located within the larger Summit area. It's next to the downtown and within walking distance of the train station. This is the area that was studied, that we were requested to study by the council and the planning board, and we did a preliminary investigation on. It includes the firehouse, the library, the YMCA, the post office, several parcels behind the firehouse and City Hall. We did not include the senior housing facility because we didn't think that that should be included. And we should also note that, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, that in 2012 and 2014, the post office and the parking lot behind it was declared an area in need of redevelopment. We did look at it and recertify to make sure everything was, still consistent there, but that was a previous designation. So really, you all have been going through this process for quite a while. This is, again, another step in your master plan revisioning and everything. But we really got involved in this in late 2017, once for developing the redevelopment plan, once you all designated as an area in need of redevelopment. Over in 2018, in the spring and summer, we held many public outreach meetings. We had surveys. We had stakeholder meetings. We met with the property owners within the area. We met with the property owners surrounding the area and did a lot of online outreach to try to cover as many people as we could. In fall of 2018, we used all that public information that we got and all the direction from the public in terms of what they wanted to see, and did some market research to kind of compare those two and see where realities were, where some challenges might be, and developed a policy development from there. Throughout the winter, we've been drafting this plan, which you all now have and which is available on the city's website. And we also got some additional feedback once we had some of the understanding of what the market was thinking. And that was additional feedback from property owners within the site. We had another meeting with the seniors. We had another meeting with the public in general, just to kind of update them what the market said. And so here we are today, in April, trying to present this plan to you that you can consider. This is the first reading. You typically, you're not required to have a presentation, but we figure more information is better than not. After this, we'll be going to the planning board for a master plan consistency review, and then of course come back here for a public hearing. So this is the first step in that process. So to give you a general idea of the things that we focused on throughout the entire redevelopment plan, it's derived from an extensive public outreach process. As you can see, we've had a really great time. We even went to the high school, which is still my favorite, but we worked with the Downtown Inc. So it's been a really great process. So it's very much driven by what the public wants to see. We emphasized context-sensitive design that kind of bridges the gap between the existing downtown and where there's kind of a lack of development and the residential just beyond the redevelopment area. The Historic Preservation Commission was actually really helpful in giving us some feedback on how to do that with design. We kind of focused on doing that with scale and program and development and making sure that was appropriate. In reality, it proposes a kind of a small new neighborhood that is going to be designed to support the existing downtown and create new opportunities for the city and revenue sources that they wouldn't have had otherwise, and that's kind of what you'll see when we get into each of the pieces. It's very sensitive to infrastructure and traffic limitations. We know parking concerns exist. That came up a lot. We know that there's traffic congestion. We know that there's pedestrian safety issues, so that is one of the things we focused on throughout everything and any requirement in the plan. The Environmental Commission helped a lot with some guidance on sustainability. And when I say modern standards for construction, it's just, what kind of space is a retail user looking for today? What kind of space is what is like modern day office space? I don't mean modern architecture. So it was really focusing on what's the next step of development and not just where we are now, where is everything headed, including things like accounting for Uber and dropping off cars. And lastly, and the biggest thing, and my favorite part, is we wanted to create spaces and places for people to enjoy Summit, people of all ages, people that want to enjoy it all times of the day, whether they're, the seniors walking around. Some of them like to go to 7-Eleven a lot or walking to the bus stop, or if it's students after school, we want to make something that's very inclusive. And this is just a reminder of the block and lots that's included. It's a little over 10 acres, but most of it is owned by public property, which is another reason you're not getting a lot of revenues currently. But this is just kind of a list of the buildings that I kind of already included that are within the redevelopment area. And because this is a larger area and it's not just one parcel and there's a lot going on here and there's, you know, some complex things that we were trying to understand, we wanted to look at the area from 4 different districts and kind of create a vision for each of those districts that's appropriate either from scale, uses, different types of public spaces that they need to have, different parking requirements. So we broke them down into these different sub-districts. They don't necessarily entail a phasing or a priority. It just kind of gives a clear vision for each of these areas. The first sub-district is the post office and the parking lot behind it. The second one is the YMCA, the parking lot, and the library. The third phase is the firehouse and St. Teresa's and the funeral home and everything that's there. And then the fourth phase is City Hall, the parking lot, and then the several commercial developments along Broad Street. So I'm going to try to slow down a little bit here, but we wanted to give, first of all, a good idea of the kind of uses that we proposed for this area. They're based off of public feedback. They are based off of our understanding of what the market seems to think is feasible. For example, a large, big box grocery store, maybe not something you're looking for, but also something that the market didn't think was appropriate, so we would include it here. In general, we tried to keep this very commercial oriented. It's an important transition between the existing downtown where there's offices and a lot of daily activity into what will become a new residential node, a neighborhood that needs to feel that way as well and be designed and protected to do so. We wanted to continue the civic uses, so we have things like a museum as an option, as an extension of the civic uses you see along Maple Street. And so it's kind of focused more being more downtown oriented. We think this is a perfect location for a flagship, a great, gorgeous office building that's appropriately scaled and designed. And it's also a great opportunity near the green. Right now, the minimum public open space is 3,000 square feet, which means that, you know, no matter what gets built there, at least 3,000 square feet is going to be set aside for public space. We put in pretty strict guidelines in terms of what that public space should look like. Throughout the outreach process, we asked people on different types that they wanted to see, what was missing. Here, hardscaped spaces were across the board. Any demographic was looking for some hardscape opportunities where they could, I don't know if it was a skateboard, but that's one piece, but also, you know, just sit and relax or have a yoga class and not mess up grass. So this is one of the areas that we targeted for that kind of harder, tougher landscape area that could also be used throughout the day for commercial users. Minimum retail space is 2,500. That's to make sure that the street's activated and continues the commercial space and activity from the downtown, the existing downtown to this area. And right now it has a maximum height of 4 stories. This area we were a little more sensitive to and wanted to be really careful in terms of architecture and open space and uses. It is next to the historic beautiful green. It does have 2 really great civic users, and we wanted to make sure that whatever came in there complemented that and didn't, you know, in any way negatively impact it. We wanted to also see an expansion of that community activity and make sure that there's a reasonable amount of open space to kind of reflect the large setbacks that are already there and complement and extend the effect that the green has on the area as a whole. Again, here you'll see a lot more community uses. Unlike phase 1, we don't have residential in phase 1. We do allow residential here, but it's a lower density, lower number of units, and we think that it's a great opportunity for someone to be able to live and walk right over to the train station or look over the green. But lower density than the other areas that allow residential, 30 units per acre, which that's a pretty typical, urban suburban number. Minimum public open space is larger here, again, like I said, to make sure you continue that open feel and that public space from the green into the development. And the maximum height is 3 stories, so a little bit lower here to be contextually sensitive to the buildings around it. And we have commercial uses, but they're more limited here, again, to kind of protect the users that are already using the library and the YMCA. This Subdistrict 3, as I mentioned, is where the firehouse is and the surrounding properties to the south. This is where we thought you had the most opportunity to kind of be creative, create something that maybe doesn't already exist in Summit. It has some better layouts in terms of potential to hold bigger users like a small grocery store or even a small theater. We think that because there's a little bit of a buffer from the historic downtown buildings and from the green and the kind of lower scale there, it's another opportunity to have a little more height, and especially definitely work in some residents that can either, walk to the downtown and have jobs there already, go into the first district, or, go to the YMCA. Like, it's a perfect location to create that community node. And because of that, it does have the largest requirement for open space, the 6,500, because to make that space work and to make a little bit more of a scale work there and to have all these different uses and provide some new opportunities, you need to have a great space that people want to spend time in, and I'll show you some images later, but we really focused on the experience people would have there and how that would be a space that was more green and more flexible, and could be programmed throughout the year, and maybe the Y could use it for classes, maybe the library could use it, but it's an opportunity for everything around it to come together. This does have more uses. It does have more of a nightlife component in terms of that it allows a brewery or a brew pub, so some of those uses that would make this a 24/7 kind of neighborhood opportunity. Not necessarily 24/7, but at least, maybe till like 10 p.m. Again, it has more commercial opportunities. We wanted to be really creative here. For example, there's like a demonstration kitchen here that's become a pretty popular thing around renters and downsizers, where they can hold events themselves. They can go and cook and have people over, or they have chefs come in and teach you. And I think there's someone, she's probably in here, but there's someone who actually does that here now, and she was like, I'd love that. Like, I'll move there. Again, a little bit higher density because it contextually and scale-wise can handle it and hold it. More open space, more of a minimum requirement for retail because that's going to be important to keep people moving around, and a little bit higher than the other districts at 4 stories. This is the last phase, not the last phase, the 4th district. This is, again, we were trying to make sure to complement the fact that it's next to City Hall, that it's in between City Hall and senior housing, so we're not trying to push a brewery or brew pub or anything like that here, being considerate of that. It does have an open space requirement, but not as large as the other areas because these are kind of odd-shaped parcels that might be hard to accommodate larger open space. Because of that odd shape, we did give it a little bit more density so that it's able to provide some of the public give-backs we'll get into later, afford those, and also build up for that. So it has a slightly higher density, but again, something very appropriate for Summit at 40 units per acre. Some retail space, but a lower height of 3 stories. In terms of architectural design, like I said, the Historic Preservation Commission really came in and gave us some good ideas on how to speak about this appropriately, and they were great to talk to in terms of getting some understanding of how they operate. But these images that we put in the plan were directly from the public outreach that people voted on and liked the most, so we put them in the plan, and we clearly say this is inspiration. This is not what's supposed to be built here. When you come and propose, you will have projects, and they will be publicly vetted, and they will be considered before anything's adopted or executed or moved forward. But it's just to inspire them, to show them the kind of quality and aesthetic that was popular here. But we do have a lot of, I'd say generic, but often not included architectural design standards, like regulating height and having guidance on making really good door and window placement, and having glazing, and regulating the building materials so that they're high quality, which I know is important to the HPC. The open space and plaza design, we wanted to make sure that each district had its own identity for what it's trying to achieve in terms of open space, so that you don't just have a bunch of plazas with kind of bistro sets up, but they're really intentionally designed. The minimum area requirements reflect that, so that different programming is possible. The high quality public spaces in terms of year-round landscaping that's year-round attractive, that's sustainable, that's flexible, but also kind of directs people into how to enjoy that space and how to use that space. And a lot of direction on how the layout should work within the overall development in terms of how it should interact with the first floor and how it should move pedestrian activity and attract pedestrian activity. Speaking of pedestrian activity, one of the great opportunities here is Railroad Avenue, as well as a potential connection between the YMCA and the library for a really beautiful, fun, attractive pedestrian experience. These are some examples that we have in the plan itself, but beyond creating some new opportunities that are more pedestrian-focused and less car-oriented, we also looked a lot at safety. That is a concern, especially given the middle schoolers that come through the area. The seniors expressed some concerns about walking around the area. So we have some really strict guidelines for how the crosswalks need to be designed and where safety safety investigations and studies need to be done in order to improve it in the areas that were highlighted as dangerous. Oh, go back, sorry. And another thing that came up several times, and it's a very, it's a new idea for, I guess, for this country, but a WUNRF is brought up, a WUNRF design, and you can see one on the bottom left there. But it is something that's very popular in Europe. It's where cars can still use the space, but it's very much designed to make them aware of where they are and that this is a pedestrian-oriented area and to be careful. And the way that you design the curbing, the way the materials used and everything, it visually makes the pedestrians more important to everyone around, and they have more of a precedence there. And this came up several times from people in the public, not necessarily WUNRF, but a nice street that could be closed down for events or something like that. And from the market in terms of, they were looking at Cedar Street as a possible option for a really nice pedestrian plaza space. So area-wide, there's a lot of higher environmental requirements and sustainability requirements. We had a lot of good conversations with the Environmental Commission. They gave us some examples and standards they have. We wanted to make sure that every building's solar ready. We have provisions for green roofs, alternative transportation allowances and encouragement, for example, like using bikes and using car sharing as opportunities to offset some costs. And throughout the entire site, we've required 100% stormwater recapture, which I think is feasible and is a really honorable goal to have in an area that has a lot of impervious surface right now. But the landscaping is, native species. It's supposed to be very, sustainability is not even, it's cool now for the market, but it's also important for what you all are trying to do here. And a lot of the things that the Environmental Commission mentioned, we tried to work into here. The auto parking standards, we know that parking is a issue in Summit. We know that it is, at high demand and is something that we had to be very careful with. Whereas in other areas, in other kind of transit-oriented areas, we've maybe used 1-to-1 or 1.2. We wanted to be especially careful here for residential requirements, so we have a little higher than traditional at 1.4. In general, the market kind of also agreed with this, that we spoke with. Some of them even wanted higher ones, but we think this should be able to capture the market that's here right now and some of the great things you're already doing with managing parking. Most commercial spaces and all the other uses have 3 spaces per 1,000, which again is pretty standard. There's 100% replacement of any existing parking, so there will not be a loss of parking. And then we also included bicycle parking standards, both indoor and outdoor, because that's going to be an important part for kind of bridging that last little gap for either people coming to the downtown or people going, commuting from their home, have a nice place to leave your bike, and then hop on the train for work. Circulation and loading. We wanted to make sure that this is another good example of a WUNRF, if you're curious, on the right, where you can kind of see that there's cars allowed there, but it's definitely got a different feel than the traditional giant black strip of asphalt. But we wanted to make sure to find ways to improve the existing circulation. We know that there's traffic congestion. Those things will have to be studied and considered. Phil wrote an excellent, probably the highest standard I've ever seen in terms of a traffic impact study prior to any development being considered or approved. They have to do some significant modeling, and we even laid out the catchment areas for that and made it very specific so that it's clear that this is a concern and it needs to be addressed and dealt with publicly. We wanted to make some flexible loading and unloading standards. There are requirements there, but we also don't want to, kill this area. Like if that entire street was, partially loading areas, it wouldn't be as attractive or pedestrian friendly. And throughout the plan, we have traffic calming measures, which I know the police chief knows very well. But yeah, so in general, we're just trying to improve the quality of life here. So the heights and the densities and everything I gave you before, we were trying to, I know this is really tiny, I apologize, I didn't realize it was going to come out this tiny, but we wanted to find a way to incorporate the things that the public wanted to see and make it very clear how they were going to be included and how they would be considered, and also give the council an ability to negotiate things in exchange for getting the public benefits that we heard over the entire process. And to kind of give you an idea of what that means, for Sub-District 1, which again was the post office and the parking lot behind it, some of the things we heard that people really wanted to see were additional parking for senior housing facilities. So this means replacing what's there plus giving them more. I know that we've heard a lot about the struggles they're having there. Additional public parking and or gateway and pedestrian enhancements at Railroad Avenue and Maple Street. So that's redoing all of Railroad Avenue to be this beautiful pedestrian connection and creating a beautiful gateway to connect people to the downtown and to the sub-district. And if a developer provides those things in exchange, they can get an additional floor or height to kind of offset the cost of those public improvements. And we just wanted to spell this out. I don't want to go through each of them, but I can tell you a lot of it's related to public parking. The library was looking to see a second entrance if possible that would allow them to use the building after hours. And that's Sub-District 2. And Sub-District 3, the improvements we talked about on Cedar Street, the inclusion of a marketplace. A lot of the public wants to see a small grocer here. And in Sub-District 4, again, additional public parking, Chestnut Avenue enhancements, and Springfield and Railroad Gateway enhancements. So the plan has basic improvements they have to make to Broad Street and Maple Street and Morris Street. But all of these take it one step further, and that's pretty much clearly outlined in the plan so that the public and the developers know the expectations here and the opportunities to get a little bit more height or density. So that's it. In terms of possible next steps, as I mentioned, this would be the introduction of the ordinance for the redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan itself becomes the zoning for the area, the guiding document for this area. It goes through a planning board master plan consistency review, then comes back to you all for a second reading and a public hearing. After that, we've had a lot of questions about what is this going to look like how many units, is there, what kind of revenues. All that stuff gets worked out after this. And that goes through a negotiation process that includes the public and the council and the private market. And after a plan is adopted, you can begin those discussions. And at that time, that's when you do that very particular public vetting of the style of the building, and the performer that tells you the financial analysis of the project and all those things, to vet and create a project that will ultimately, in very, very detailed language and a very thick document, be turned into a redevelopment agreement that spells out exactly what the developer has to do to meet the things that you all agreed upon over the summer and fall potentially. That's it.
Thank you very much, Annie. Does Phil, Michael, do you want to add anything to the presentation? Or are we?
No, I appreciate everybody's time this evening. I know you have probably a full agenda, so if there are any questions, we're happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we will do, because while this is not the public hearing per se, but since there are folks from the public here, and we always like to hear from the public as to what is going on as far as what people are thinking. What I'd like to do is just start off, if council members had any comments or questions, start off there. Otherwise, we will open it up to public folks in the audience who want to have questions or comments or things for us to think about. Want to hear from you guys, and then we'll wrap it up. I just wanted to point out one thing, because the maps show large areas being covered as different sub-districts, right? But the context of this and the way that we frame this is a non-condemnation redevelopment. That is, that we specifically said that private parties, if they want to participate, can do so, but we're not going to go there with eminent domain and take over a private party's property in order to do some kind of development because some developer wants to do that type of development, right? So while there's post office is there, the YMCA is there, the library is there, there's a bunch of private entities that are there. Every one of those parties can decide whether they want to opt in or stay out. And that's just not going to change between now and when, because there's enough land there that is purely owned by the city of Summit for us to do development projects. And it'll be almost, rather than looking at it as a green field where you have development, it's more like an infield of filling in different parcels that will exist. The other thing that the public should be aware of, and this has been on our agenda, one of the properties that is publicly owned, privately owned, did come on the market, and the city was able is involved in what we ultimately think will be a successful negotiation for the purchase of that property, which is the property at 7 Cedar Street. And you'll see somewhere further in our agenda where we'll be doing an ordinance for introduction about ultimately purchasing that property. But the reason that property is significant, and we've talked about this at council in the last couple of council meetings, is because it's strategically located within that sub-district 2, if you will. And if, for those of you who don't know, if you know where the YMCA is, the parking lot that's there right next to the Y, when you're facing into the Cedar Street behind the Y, away from the park, there's a little professional office building. It's about 2 stories high. It's got a large parking lot. It's adjacent to the fire station. It's contiguous with the fire station, so it makes a larger parcel available to us. The good thing from your perspective as residents and taxpayers in this town is that it is a fully occupied building, and that if for some reason this redevelopment did not happen, it will continue to pay private property taxes, and it brings revenue into the city. So either way, it's a win-win for us, but we were very fortunate that it came up the market when it did. I think that's the context that I want to give folks. I don't know if there's stuff that I've missed. The last thing I want to say is, obviously you're seeing a plan here. And I think the key component from Annie's conversation and presentation is what happens from now on is not only do we have this back and forth with the public, and the planning board has that same discussion, but ultimately this is what we would like to see. But we're not the developers, right? So developers will want to do what they want to do, and we will have to have a negotiated process with them to see what we, from that plan, can get or we want to see done. But this tells the market, this is what we would like, these are the parameters, this is what we think is acceptable, these are the uses we want in this area. It gives a sense of where we are. But this is not an uninformed plan. And the reason we say that it's not an uninformed plan is because prior to this, we already had a vetting process with developers who gave what was called a response to a request for qualifications. So we were able to see who were qualified developers, and I can honestly tell you they're major developers both in New Jersey as well as nationally who put in proposals. There were multiples of people who did, some of a consortium of them. And then subsequently, the next step we also took, we had them provide conceptual ideas, not necessarily plans about each specific site, but conceptual ideas of what they would plan on doing in this set of parcels. And so this plan that you're seeing here is pretty well informed with what the marketplace is telling us they are willing to consider. I hope if I've screwed anything up, somebody else on this dais will correct me. But with that, let me ask any other members of council or the mayor to comment. Mayor.
I just want to reiterate what you're saying. This is a framework, and it's an 80-page document with appendices, and it is on the website. So it's very clear. I've read it a couple of times, and but being old-fashioned, I needed a paper copy. Certainly it gets through, and Andy just gave us a really great overview, but it gets into some of the details and explains things very clearly. So I would encourage you to read it if you're interested. And again, this is a framework. This sets up the parameters within which we can negotiate with developers and get input from the community. It's a starting place. And that's what you're talking about with the conceptual plans. That's the market research that you were talking about. So I'm excited about this.
Anyone else? Steve.
I just want to thank them. I mean,
Yeah.
you met with us a number of times privately, and this little recap did a fantastic job of what we had talked about. So thank you for everything you've done, and I have confidence that your outline is one that we can follow.
Thank you, Steve. Matt.
Thank you for the excellent presentation, and I I'm so appreciative of all the people that came to all the meetings and gave so much input. It's really nice to have such an enthusiastic community. I have one specific question, maybe for you, City Solicitor Giacobbe, which is, I noticed brew pub and brewery listed a couple times in a couple of the sub-districts, and can we, with redevelopment, can we get more liquor licenses, or can we find another way to get a brew pub in there?
No. There's actually, there's different legislation right now that's being proposed for microbreweries, et cetera. There's legislation, if you have a hotel, they can have a limited liquor license, but the number of liquor licenses is based on population. It's disseminated by the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, which is a state agency. Most municipalities, you'd be surprised, actually have more liquor licenses than would be permitted. And many municipalities have what's known as pocket licenses. People own a license, but they don't operate it. And so when things like this go into existence, you'll see there'll be sales of pocket licenses. And there's two types of licenses. There's consumption licenses, which is like a brew pub. And then there's retail licenses, which would be more like a liquor store. But we don't have the ability. That's all done through the state agency, and it's all based on population and the need. They don't want to have a community oversaturated with liquor licenses. And and the market will drive the price. I've been in communities where, a liquor license will sell for $500,000-$600,000 for a consumption license.
Bill, do you want to?
Yeah, if I could just hop on with that. One of the great things about this redevelopment area in particular, not redevelopment areas generally speaking, but because there's so much public property here, and I think that Michael was one of the pioneers of this in Morristown, working on public properties, and when you transact that property, there are certain things that you can do in terms of the title to retain public control or ownership that would allow a concessionaire's permit to be had. So this is the Xanadu complex in the Meadowlands. That's exclusively how all their liquor licenses are happening. Jockey Hollow in Morristown, that's exclusively how, and that was all done through the redevelopment process. So that does provide that opportunity. And the microbrew thing is relatively easy to get. In Chatham, the Twin Elephants, that's on a microbrew license on River Road, except you can't serve food there. That's one of the rules. But they could produce a lot of beer under that license if so desired. Right. But this does open up opportunities, and particularly due to the current public ownership, is really the main opportunity for that.
Thank you, very clear, and thank you, City Administrator Rogers. We could open a hotel with one cot upstairs.
You got 100 rooms. They thought about it.
Beth.
Thank you, Council President. This has been a really informative process from the beginning, and I want to thank you guys for all the hard work, but I also want to thank all of you in the room and everyone else who's listening. I mean, I think you heard Annie say at the beginning of the presentation, this doesn't happen everywhere, that the community's this engaged and this involved in the process and cares this much. We've had so many people come to these open houses and meetings and give input, and people that are not usually always involved. But so many people in Summit from all walks of life and from all four corners of Summit have come out to be involved in that. And that's what's going to make this successful. And that's what's going to make this a great project moving forward from Summit that really addresses a lot of needs that we have in the communities, but also a lot of the things that we all want to see in our community going forward. So the reason that this is going to work is a lot of hard work from a lot of people that are working directly on this project, but also because of the involvement of all of you and your input and the time that you've taken to share with us what you want to see in this project.
Great, thanks. Anybody else? Okay. With that, I'd like to open it up for anybody from the public. Just come on up, state your name and where you live in Summit, and Pamela, come on up, and whatever comment, questions, great.
I'm Pamela Zave. That's Z as in zebra, A, V as in Victor, E. And I live at 89 Kent Place Boulevard. And I apologize for the naivety of this question. I haven't been involved in any of the planning stages up to now. But I am wondering whether this planning process has involved at any stage what I would call an existence proof. That is to say, for any of these districts, a sketch of a possible redevelopment that would meet all the requirements. And, of course, it's an existence proof because if there's no such sketch, then you can't meet these requirements. And I would say that the specific thing that concerns me and that causes me to ask this question is the reiteration of, well, we want to do all these things, but we need more parking in every district. And that's what worries me and makes me wonder about it. Thank you.
Sure. Annie, would you like to?
To get to the numbers that we get to, we use the public feedback, but then we use our own knowledge of kind of massing and how to calculate those different things. For each of these districts, we laid out a potential floor plate for commercial, for residential, as well as structured parking that it would wrap. Sorry, I'm looking. That it would wrap so that it can not only meet the parking requirements of whatever use is there, but also the additional parking we're looking at. So we tested those numbers to make sure that it was feasible, but also using the market numbers. For example, one of the respondents said that you need at least 4 stories for commercial use to be viable and provide additional public parking. So that was some of the guidelines that we used as well. So it has been laid out to make sure it's feasible, especially from just like standard floor plate understanding. So I don't know if that answers the question, but we did make sure that it could all fit and was buildable.
I think it does. Pam, you need to come back up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your answer. You're talking a lot about numbers, and numbers are different from a real plan.
But okay,
a drawing that you can see. There are 16 parking spaces here.
At this stage, right, so again, like I said, this is parameters of what could be built. When we get to a redevelopment agreement with developers who will actually build the site, and you guys can correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, it's at that point in time that we will come back to the public and we will show you plans. This is what this will look like here. This is what this will look like over there. This is how many stories it is. Mm-hmm. This is how the wraparound will look or not look. This is what's doable. These are the uses. We're not at that stage. This tells you.
But we did conceptualize that.
Okay,
we did do that. Yeah. So I understand your question. I'm sorry I wasn't clear. We did take the numbers and put them on the ground into very simple boxes because we know like how wide a corridor of parking is, how much depth the commercial space will need, and so on. So we did take the numbers and put them into actual buildings. Like they don't have beautiful windows or anything, but we know that they'll fit.
Okay.
So yes, what you're saying, they have been put into 3D. Test fit. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize.
But I just want to be clear, because I don't want people thinking this is exactly what will be built at any site, right? So we're still going to have to negotiate with developers. That's why I don't want people going, okay, it's going to be 3 stories here, and then this could be 4 stories there, and this is what's going to be, because we don't want to leave you guys with the misimpression that this has all been, whether it's test fitted or not, this is still at a parameter stage in my head, because unless we have a developer who's willing to sign on the bottom line, we don't have a building.
Yeah.
And Council President, that's exactly why we didn't show any of those visuals, because we didn't want anybody to misinterpret that is the thing that's being proposed here. This is just like zoning. It's more like zoning than it is a concept plan.
Right.
And if I can elaborate, just to explain, we weren't trying to lay out anything in particular, but for example, if you have 50,000 square feet and we say 25,000 has to be used for open space, and then you have to provide this much parking, we just want to make sure that, or we just throwing out stupid numbers? We want to make sure they were informed.
Right, understood,
Yeah.
that you're not proposing things here that are not doable, right? So these are all doable things. It's ultimately, though, we're going to have to negotiate what exactly is going to be built. Anybody else? Yes, please, come on up.
My name is Vivian Hardy. I live at 1 Oak Knoll Road in Summit. I want to thank you for having these kind of meetings and making everything out in the open. It's very helpful to have it be that way. I have 2 concerns. I've lived in Summit for 51 years, which is getting to seem like a record. Anyway, so I've seen Summit develop over time. And I've also been on the library board for 10 years and was chairman of the library board back when we were redeveloping the building. And I don't go to library meetings. I have no connection with the library anymore, except in my heart. It's a very great concern to me in my heart. So I'm only concerned with redevelopment District 2. And I also have another interest, and that today I was at a book group where we had a historian there who talked about the history of New Jersey. And I think Summit needs to think about the history of Summit. And our library now is built where the Carnegie Library used to be. I, for one, would not have liked our putting a new library building there. I would have wanted to do something to keep the Carnegie Library and add on to it, because I think that having a sense of the past is just as important as getting to be modern in the future. The buildings that I looked at that you showed are all very modern looking. But I kind of think that area where the connection is, and then the library, and then the post office, and the YMCA and Central Church create that sense of community and village that we really don't have anyplace else. When we redevelop the medical group, it now looks like a kind of modern building. So I want to encourage you to think about preserving some of the history of the town. Let me go back to the library for just a minute. We have now, I think, one of the most excellent libraries going. If you're going to move the people out of the library, it's probably going to be a 2-year project. The kids that come in from the middle school, the seniors that go to educational programs, all of that's going to be turned upside down. Will we be able to reclaim how excellent the program is right now? The library is so much more than books. Books are very important. I had a little go-round with a librarian, with the mayor a few generations ago about whether or not we needed books in the library. Well, we do need books in the library, but it is so much more than just the books. It is, I think, the heartbeat of the community. I would hope that you will take very careful consideration about doing something that would disrupt what's going on in the library. So my hope would be that you also conserve the village feeling, a little bit of our history, and keep the town as a place where it's not too crowded when you come into it. I go on the train, I see what's happened in other towns, and they begin to feel creeping urbanization. And I think Summit will lose it if we get to be an urban community instead of a suburban community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. We're certainly going to be very, very mindful of the role that the library, the important role the library plays in our community. We've had multiple conversations with members of the library board, and we'll continue to do that. It's a very important part of our community. So, and nothing has been decided. So.
Yes, please come on.
My name is Richard Wheeless, and it's Wheeless. And I've lived in Summit for 42 years in 34 Kings Hill Court. And the only thing I want to say is, wow, what a beautiful comment you made, Vivian. And I agree with everything she just said. I couldn't say it any better. So I'm just concerned about the beauty of this development. And but Vivian said it perfectly. And wow, thank you very much, Vivian.
Thank you very much.
Can I just point out one thing? You know, one of the reasons we're doing this, approaching this project as an area in need of redevelopment as opposed to an outright sale of public property to a developer, is that the city, because we're doing a redevelopment plan and then negotiating, having conversations with the public, we are able to, as a community, maintain some control over what is going in there as a whole plan, as a whole section, a whole area, rather than just a developer buying a piece of property and putting up whatever is possible within the zone area. I mean, some of the things that will be in here might be able to do more than that if you're just buying that property individually and doing your own thing. But it has to be looked at holistically, has to fit in with the community, it has to satisfy, you know, the vast majority of our community, of the public. So that's why we're going down this road, because it really allows us to maintain an element of control. By control, I don't mean common council control, but the control of the members of the community. So in terms of what we want. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you can even control the color of the building if you'd like. You have a lot of control.
Right.
And the other point I'd like to add is that, you know, Topology, us, we've had the Historic Preservation Committee as well as the Environmental Commission, which is somewhat atypical, I would say, than other communities that don't necessarily get those types of groups involved in this part of the process. They'll wait till, you know, they get public hearings and then at that point in time have folks speak up. But we wanted to have people not only have the public input through all that public participation, but behind also have some of these discussions with folks who are, you know, are involved in these respective volunteer committees, because those folks have knowledge, a great deal of knowledge. We're very fortunate in this community that we have a lot of great volunteers who in their professional lives have a lot of expertise that if we were to actually pay for, this community would be bankrupt, but are willing to volunteer their time and give their input through volunteering. And so therefore, I think we're very cognizant of the need to keep the character of Summit. We're not trying to change what Summit is. The reason we came to Summit is because we all like what Summit feels like. And I understand exactly, I think I understand what you're trying to say. There's a feel to a town. There's not only just a simple roadway and what the buildings, but there's an overall feel and a sense that you get that's based on scale, it's based upon design, it's based upon a look of what it is, so that when you get out of it and you walk around, you feel as if you're at home, right? And so we are not missing that, I think, or not mindful of that fact, that when we go through this, we need to make sure we're not losing something in order to gain something. Anyone else? Claire, please, come on.
Good evening. Claire Toth, T-O-T-H, 11 Sunset Drive. And though I'm speaking only for myself, I do sit on the boards of both the Historic Preservation Commission and Summit Downtown, Inc. So I've been involved in a lot of different ways on this. And this may be a question more for the city than for Topology. One thing that has struck me throughout this process is the community's desire for really usable, flexible, open space in an area that abuts the Village Green, which mostly sits there unused. And I wonder how specific, I haven't read all 224 pages of this plan. There's more than just the 80 in front. You know, how specific, how the redevelopment area might be better, might be connected to the Village Green, and how in turn the city might take advantage of the redevelopment to find more ways to use the open space that we do have, you know, while keeping it open.
Right.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah. And that was kind of reiterated with a lot of the public that we spoke with. I think there is a desire to keep a bit of that very natural, pristine, like quiet feeling of the green. Like that was brought up several times. But then there was also the tension for wanting to be able to use it more. That's one of the reasons I brought up that hardscaping that kept coming up over and over again. Because you know we see the green and we go out to the public outreach and we think they're going to want like this, you know, Garden of Eden kind of look, but instead they're like, we would like some tough surface and some chairs and things that we can actually kind of be rough with, because I guess people don't feel like they have those opportunities with the green. So that's, again, that's absolutely one of the things that we want to make sure is incorporated throughout the redevelopment area to support all the users that are within the redevelopment area, like the library and the YMCA that are looking for additional space. But as she mentioned, I'm sorry, Ms. Toth, I don't remember your first name, it's very important that this area ties to the green. And that is highlighted over and over again in terms of a requirement for a certain pedestrian buffer that, visually ties to the green between the YMCA and the library, as well as gateway, when we say gateway enhancements, we mean like public art, really attractive landscaping around intersections, things like that that naturally pull people from the green into this area or from this redevelopment area into the green.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the other things, and I know because we've had so many meetings about this, is we want to make sure that this does not feel like an area that's just been plopped down, right? That you just, and that it's separate from the rest of the connectivity of the town. And so we have a downtown that's historic in nature, and it's a certain look and a feel for it. And so you have to feel as there's a connectivity between whether it's the green, the downtown, moving back and forth between different places, and not feel as if you're somehow, in this different zone, and then everything else around it is not within that zone. Anybody else have any other questions, comments? Yes, please.
My name is Lisa Resnick, and I've lived in Summit for 10 years, now in Maplewood, but I have a business here, nonprofit, and when I read through the report earlier, I saw the word entertainment, and today I didn't see the word entertainment, I saw recreation when you showed your slides. So my interest is if there might be a movie theater, because there isn't one anymore, and I know the city of Summit, most people would like to have one.
Yeah. Yes, we didn't want to put every single use in, and that was misleading that we didn't include that, but that is still a component of it. And while a traditional, 12-screen movie theater is not really feasible and not really doing well in most downtowns where they still exist, we wanted to leave the opportunity for like a black box theater or a community theater that's a little smaller scale that you could have for community events, and that's where that falls under. And that came up over and over again from the public as something they'd like to see as an opportunity. So it's still in there. We'll make sure to add it back. I think we're just trying to be concise because there's a pretty long list.
100 pages.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? Yes, please, come on up.
Hi. My name is Mimi Allerton, Allerton. I live at 105 New England Avenue. My parents bought their house on Bellevue in 1967. So, and I'm also a real estate agent. And I'm concerned about architecture because I think that some of my favorite houses are being knocked down and have been. So I'm wondering about cohesiveness between these 4 different areas. I'm also concerned about affordability, because I think that the builders who are building are selling, like where the Infinity dealership was, they're like $1.2 million to $1.8 million. And so when I think about the millennials and I think about college debt, I just think, are we going to have areas where, because that's what they want to do, they want to walk to town in the train? If we're going to draw that, because the town has to grow and change, I understand that. But I also think we have to, like you said, it kills me that they tore down the Carnegie Library. So my thing has to do with affordability, architecture, and are there plans to make the different areas, like so that you don't have a builder doing this there and a builder doing this there, right, and there's no cohesiveness.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, thank you. I want to double check that. I'm really glad you brought up the affordable housing because I apologize that I didn't mention that. While there's a baseline requirement of 15-20% that for affordable housing, that's like the traditional affordable housing when people say that you might think of. One of the things that many of the council members brought up and the public was kind of exactly what you're talking about, the people that are millennials or, you're preaching to the choir about the stuff, college debt and everything. But so we also created a definition for workforce housing, which is policemen and firemen and teachers, right, and believe it or not, in Summit, architects and engineers, so that they can also negotiate for that kind of in-between middle class, like thoroughly middle class that's kind of priced out, either because they don't meet the affordability limits or the market limits. So they wanted to make sure that that was part of that. So we actually defined it in here, and they're going to make sure that that is part of it. So affordability, at the lower end market rate, as well as kind of that workforce middle income. And like I mentioned, we refer to the HPC guidelines. They sent them to us in terms of how they review these projects. That's why it's so many pages, because we wanted to make sure to reference all the proper documents. But we talk very specifically about the need for things to be complementary and transitional, and refer to what that means in Summit through the HPC's own language. So that's definitely a concern. That's definitely something that we made sure to protect. But as the mayor mentioned, the great thing about this is, whereas if you just turn this over to the private market, you couldn't really control how that looks. Now the public will literally be able to see anything that's going to be built, vet it, make sure it's appropriate before it's approved.
Okay, thank you.
And just so those who are listening to the acronym HPC.
Sorry.
Yes.
Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Yep, okay. Yes, please, come on up. We would appreciate it. It's also better for the, for people who are watching at home.
They can't hear you if you don't
can't hear
speak
you.
into the microphone.
You can take your time, though. Don't rush.
No rush.
No, we're not going anywhere.
Sorry.
That's all right. Take your time.
Hi, I'm Noni Kirkland, Kirkland, and I've lived in Summit for 40 years. My children have gone to school here, and I love the community. And I'm glad to see that we are taking time to go slowly, because I've seen what's happened in other communities, and they've done a lot of fancy things, beautiful bump outs and all kinds of stuff like that. And they're finding that they are less use than they thought they would be. So I encourage you to go very slowly and have definite plan.
Okay.
Thank
you. Thank you very much.
Well, it's been 2 years so far, so. and we're only just adopting the plan, the framework.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you, all of you guys, for all of your hard work.
Yes,
Really
thank
do-
you, thank you.
There's been a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. To get to this point, it takes a lot of work to get to here. We still have a long road ahead of us, and we'll go on that road one step at a time. So thank you. What I'm going to suggest, we take a 2-minute break, so folks who want to leave can leave. Otherwise, there's still public comments on things that are not on the agenda, so feel free to stay for that, and then we'll go through the rest of the agenda. Thanks, folks. Okay. We're back on going through our agenda. The next portion of our agenda is to do public comments. If there's anyone here in the audience who would like to make a public comment that is on a matter that's not on the agenda, it's now the time to speak. So anybody here have public comments? Okay. Public comments going once?
Does he know?
I have no idea. Okay. Does anybody here have public comments? Does anybody want to make a public comment? Going once? Going twice? Okay, no public comments. Okay, moving on. Ordinances for hearing. Councilman Vartan, actually, Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance for hearing 19-3182?
An ordinance to amend the code, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 7, Administrative Policies and Procedures, Section 2-69, Fees for Municipal Services, Subsection 2-69.3, Fees to be collected by Chief of Police.
Councilman Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. Ordinance 19-3182 increases the fees for extra duty assignments, better known as outside traffic jobs, typically seen around construction work projects. The proposed change increases the fee to that of the top patrol officer's overtime rate. This change is consistent with other police departments. It has no impact on city spending and will likely increase the number of these jobs that will be done by the Summit Police instead of the county police. I move to open the hearing for this ordinance.
Second?
Second.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
your second tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much
Okay,
appreciated.
Any comments from members of council on this ordinance? Okay, this is a public hearing, so any comments from members of the public on this ordinance? Okay, going once, going twice, sold. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I will consider this hearing for this ordinance closed. Moving on, Madam Clerk, would you read 19-3183?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-18, Traffic Lane Use Restrictions.
Councilman Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. Ordinance 19-3183 codifies the designated traffic lanes. Specifically from Passaic Ave moving east, there will be a single lane for left turn and through traffic only, and the 2 curb lanes will be for right turns only. From River Road moving north, the left lane will be for the left turns only, and the curb lane for through traffic. I move to open the hearing for this ordinance.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Matt.
Thank you, Council President. I'm so glad that we're thrilled that we're doing this living over near there. And thank you. I have a question. Once the senior facility opens there at the intersection of Morris Avenue and River Road, are these markings going to be enough, or do we need even more kind of traffic flow measures over there?
Where the light is now?
Aren't we talking about?
So what we're doing is the new traffic signal.
Oh, Passaic and River.
The new traffic signal's been installed already, so this is codifying the.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I take that back.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate what Councilman Gould said, but this is an intersection that I use frequently, and these traffic lights and signals have dramatically improved the safety and the flow of traffic through this area. So I think this was a long time in coming. I'm really happy to see it installed, and it's working really well and definitely improving everything in that area. It's working very well.
I would concur. It allows me to take my younger son to piano lessons without being killed when I make left to go to Chatham. Steve.
I want to thank everybody for doing this and the speed that it was been done, because, but my one question is, we also approved one for Chatham and River Road, I believe.
Chatham Road.
Chatham Road, yeah.
Yes, Chatham Road. And it causes me to wonder when that's going to, and I know this is not part of this ordinance, but it brought to mind when that was going to be done.
Does anyone want to speak to this?
Let me move so Aaron can answer.
Aaron will come up to it, so you don't have to move up.
Evening all. We did request that from the county. They did approve it. As of last week, they're still developing the design. They did their traffic count, so we might see a fall bid, late fall, early 2020 winter construction. So probably within a year, really.
Looking forward to that.
Okay. Are there any comments from members of the public with regard to this ordinance? Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, that portion of the public hearing closed. Okay, moving on to 19-3184. Madam Clerk, would you please read?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-13, Turn Prohibitions, subsection 7-13.1, Turn Prohibitions designated, and subsection 7-13.2, No Right Turn on Red.
Councilman Barton.
Thank you, Council President. Ordinance 19-3184 prohibits 2 turns. The first prohibition is a right turn from Passaic onto River while in the left turn only lane. The second is prohibition of right turns on red from Passaic onto River from both of the 2 right lanes. I move to open the hearing for this ordinance.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public on this hearing? Going once, going twice. So, okay, close that hearing. Finance, 19-3185. Madam Clerk, please read.
Ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank.
Councilwoman Little.
Thank you, Council President. Finance Ordinance 19-3185 is in reference to the cap bank. Most taxpayers are familiar that there's a levy cap law which limits the amount of any property tax increase to 2% above the previous year. But there is a second cap which limits the spending to the cost of living adjustment or COLA that's applied to the previous year's appropriations. When those caps are not used, it is possible for the municipality to bank them and keep them in reserve and essentially for any unexpected expenses that arise. So there's not a bond issued, there's not actual monies being put in a bank. It's just allowing us a reserve money that could be levied if if needed in any given year. So this ordinance is to allow us to do that this year, and I would ask that the council open this for hearing.
It's my night to be second. Second.
And you're doing a wonderful job at it.
It's my job.
Exactly. Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? Okay. Oh, Steve,
yeah,
sorry.
Yes. As a councilman on the finance, I just want to really stress that this is for emergencies. It's not to be for future or this and future councils to use this as an operational budget sort of thing. We here in New Jersey are saddled with some high taxes, and as well as we know, the salt thing isn't helping us at all. So I just want to make sure that we keep that in focus today and tomorrow, that it's our responsibility to work with the city to ensure that we don't
Right.
take it to
I
extremes.
believe that the budget that the city has done for the municipal budget does not involve touching the cap bank. Councilwoman Little, please.
Yes, that's correct. The proposed increase is around 1%, so well below even the 2% cap, and certainly going nowhere near the cap bank. So this is just giving us a reserve in the case of an extraordinary emergency, something like Hurricane Sandy or something else where we had unexpected costs. The city, obviously, if you've been at any other meetings, has spent a lot of time and effort putting together a budget, which we do every year, really trying to nail down the cost and keeping to the budget that we've proposed. This is for an emergency or for anything that's really unexpected or out of the ordinary.
I mean, in my opinion, it's something akin to how a corporation, I guess the way I look at it is corporations have lines of credit, and you don't say just because you don't use the line of credit that you should not have a line of credit. There's some people who think, oh, why are you doing this, because you're not going to ever touch into it. But it is important, just in case there's ever an emergency, as Councilwoman Little said and Councilman Bowman said, that in case we do have that emergency situation, we have that accessibility. Any comments or questions from members of the public? So this is the hearing for that. Going once, going twice. Okay, public portion closed. Okay, moving on to the last one, 19-3186, capital projects. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
An ordinance authorizing a sub-license between the City of Summit and the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition.
Councilman Gould, please.
Thank you, Council President. So this is a project we've been working on for quite a while because working with New Jersey Transit is always challenging, not for any reason that it's a big bureaucracy. So this ordinance, as Madam Clerk said, authorizes a 5-year sub-license between the City of Summit and the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a bike shelter and locker on the New Jersey Transit property where the current bike lockers exist, but will accommodate 36 bicycles and will be much, much nicer. And I move this ordinance for hearing.
Second.
Oh. There you go. Okay.
It's all good.
It's all
You're
good.
gonna take some of the burden.
Yeah. Good. Any comments or members of council? All I'll say is I think myself, the mayor, the administrator, and Rosie were probably the only people here at the dais when actually this proposal came in, which was about 2 months after Nora and I got sworn in back in 2016.
Yep.
So it's taken a long time to get where we are. The purpose of this is to replace what is existing there, and most people don't even know what's existing there, which is a kind of a brown shed on New Jersey Transit property, and instead have what the design that they showed us at that time, and we'll see what the ultimate plans are, but it's a glass enclosed design building that's lighted and would have, this sense that, okay, it's good to drive, to bike into town. We've heard from the presentation dealing with redevelopment, one of the biggest issues is parking and cars and traffic. And one of the ways that our master plan talked about reducing that is to have connectivity through sidewalks and to have bike lanes. And the problem with having bikes is that you need a place to park safely. And this is part of that project. Okay.
I just want to thank Aaron Schrager, who has been pushing this through since the onset, so thank you.
I agree. Yes, thank you, Aaron. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Going once, going twice? Hey, that, moving on now, ordinances for final consideration. Madam Clerk, would you read 19-3182?
An ordinance to amend the code, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 7, Administrative Policies and Procedures, Section 2-69, Fees for Municipal Services, and subsection 2-69.3, Fees to be collected by the Chief of Police.
Councilman Barton.
Thank you, Council President. As a reminder, this is just to increase the extra duty fees. I move this ordinance for final consideration.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay, moving on, 19-3183. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of that ordinance?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-8, Traffic Lane Use Restrictions.
Councilman Barton.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance establishes the designated traffic lanes, as we just discussed. I move this ordinance for final consideration.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay, moving on, 19-3184. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of that ordinance?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-13, Turn Prohibitions, subsection 7-13.1, Turn Prohibitions designated, and subsection 17-13.2, No Right Turn on Red.
Councilman Barton.
Thank you, Council President. As just discussed, this prohibits the two turns, and I move this common sense ordinance for final consideration.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay, moving on, 19-3185. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of that ordinance?
An ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank.
Councilwoman Little.
Thank you. As we just discussed, this ordinance is to establish the municipal cap bank. And I move that we approve this ordinance.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay, moving on, 19-3186. Would you please read the title of that ordinance, Madam
An
Clerk?
ordinance authorizing a sub-license between the City of Summit and the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition.
Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance authorizes a 5-year sublicense agreement, as we just mentioned and discussed. I move this ordinance for final consideration.
I second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay. Now we have a couple of ordinances for introduction tonight, a pair of them. First one is Finance 6376. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of that ordinance?
An ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property identified as Block 2706, Lot 4, on the tax assessment map of the City of Summit.
Councilwoman Little, please.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance allows the city to purchase the property known as 7 Cedar Street. As we just discussed, this is a really important part of the redevelopment plan because it is included within the redevelopment area, and it gives the city control of that property going forward with the redevelopment. As mentioned earlier, but I want to reiterate in terms of this ordinance, this is a income-producing property. It remains on the tax rolls and provides tax income, will continue to provide tax income to the city as well. So this is a property that is a win-win. It's doing well as is, and it will give us a lot of flexibility in the redevelopment going forward. So I ask that we introduce this ordinance tonight.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay. The second ordinance for introduction is 6388. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of that ordinance, please?
Ordinance of the City of Summit, County of Union, New Jersey, adopting the Broad Street West redevelopment plan dated March 20th, 2019, in accordance with the local redevelopment and housing law.
Councilman Gould, please.
Thank you, Council President. As we just had the excellent presentation from Topology about the redevelopment plan, this is an ordinance to adopt the Broad Street West redevelopment plan, and then it will go to some other places, such as the Planning Board for consideration, and then it is scheduled to return here at the May 7th council meeting. I move this ordinance for adoption.
I second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Bartan?
Aye.
President Naidoo?
Aye. Okay, moving on, resolutions. We have a few resolutions from capital projects. Councilman Gould, please, number one.
Thank you, Council President. We don't need Madam Clerk this time, right?
That's correct.
We're going to give Rosie a break here.
ID number 6364, this resolution is for the purchase of road materials through the Union County Cooperative Pricing System from Weldon Materials, Inc. Of Westfield. Includes asphalt, stabilized base course, stone, and sand. I move this resolution for adoption. It's the wrong one?
Councilman Gould, I think we're talking about the resolution regarding the Broad Street West.
6394.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
We just do that in
I'm off my game today, yeah. Forgive me. ID number 6394, this resolution is to refer the proposed Broad Street West redevelopment plan dated March 20th, 2019 to the Summit Planning Board for their April 22nd meeting. And as I mentioned, it would come back here if it passes with them for our May 7th council meeting. I move this resolution for adoption.
I second.
Great. Any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now 6364, Councilman Gould.
Again, my apologies, Council President. ID number 6364, this resolution is for the purchase of road materials through the Union County Cooperative Pricing System from Weldon Materials of Westfield. Includes asphalt, stabilized base course, stone, and sand. And I move this resolution for adoption.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 6331. Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. Resolution number 6331. This resolution, based on the advice of the city engineer and the Shade Tree Advisory Committee, proposes to celebrate Arbor Day on Friday, April 26, 2019, by planting a Kwanzaa cherry tree at Lincoln Hubbard Elementary School and giving tree seedlings to students to plant in celebration of Arbor Day. I move this resolution for adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of council? All I will say is I think I was at the last Arbor Day where they celebrated at Washington School, and it was a great event because the kids are all there. They're very excited. They had songs about trees. It was wonderful. So I really enjoyed myself, at least, at that time. And planting trees, as the city administrator reminded us, there are trees available for free for residents to get through the state. And because of all the trees that we lost during all of the storms, this is a great way of replacing trees if folks want to go out there and get them.
Right, and they're free, and a lot of the trees that we've lost are on private property.
Yeah.
I mean, that's most of the trees we've lost are private property, so this is an opportunity for a resident to get a tree sapling for free. So let's just encourage everybody to put trees in their yards.
Exactly. Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. I also know that you can get up to 5 seedlings for free. So you could do quite a bit of work. And as I mentioned at the last council meeting, we have to plant 1 trillion trees in order to reverse the course of global climate change. So we have to do our part.
Let's do it.
Okay, any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to finance, 6383, Councilwoman Little.
Thank you, Council President. Finance number 1 is to authorize financial services in excess of $17,500, not to exclude $65,000, and this is for our municipal auditor. Our auditor is Ferrioli, Wheelcott, Cerula, and Cuva. They've been our auditors for some time now. This agreement does not increase the rates. It's the same amounts as last year. There is a small increase in the total amount of the contract, and that is due to a new statewide reporting system which requires auditor approval and sign off on our financial statements. So there's a little extra work that needs to be done by the auditors, but the rates are the same from the previous year, and we've been very happy with our audit services. So I ask that we approve this resolution.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thanks. Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, finance number 2.
Thank you, Council President. This is to authorize legal services in excess of $17,500, but not to exceed $60,000 for the City Bond Council, which is Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood. They have also been our bond counsel for some time, and we are very happy with their services. They, in fact, just did an issuance recently, which went very well. And there also is no increase in the rates for this contract, the same as last year. So I ask that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Thank you. Yes, I think the city administrator spoke about how well our bond sale went, that we retained our AAA bond rating, and that we had a very successful bond sale, so that's very good. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to safety. There's one resolution, 6390, Councilman Barton.
Thank you, Council President. Resolution number 6390, as per closed session. Discussion is to appoint one police officer. The candidate has completed all the background, medical, and psychological exams. I move to approve this resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions for members of council? Any comments or questions for members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Community programs, we have two resolutions. 6375, Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. Resolution 6375 declares a vacancy for the Assistant Director of Community Programs. I move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion?
Can I say something in here?
Sure, absolutely. This is the time to say something.
Now, Sunday morning I woke up, I went out and got the paper. And the air quality was bad out there. And about 3 or 4 hours later, it was on the cell phone that Summit's air was bad. Do you have any calls on that? No? Okay. Do you have a pipe coming up down the dumps, coming up to let air go up in the air? Just like the gas company to get rid of
Wait a second. Hold up.
There's sewer gas. It's sewer gas. It was there. It's been there 14 or 15 times where I lived at Jersey Center, Mount Vernon Avenue. If you want to ride down there right now, and I'll show you where the pipe is, and I'll show you there's a cone on top of it, and it's right behind the shed where I said the sanitary sewer was. But we got shit. You're talking about new buildings. Your sanitary sewer is all filled up. You got the water comes all the way from Oak Ridge Avenue, goes all the way, it's in the brook, going past Braden School. Goes all the way down into New Providence.
Excuse me, sir.
Right?
Hold on.
Excuse me, sir.
Mr. Ryan. Hold on. Okay. We've had the opportunity for public comments on things that are not on the agenda. Hold on. I asked multiple times if anybody had any comments or questions for things not on the agenda. This is clearly something, this has nothing to do with the vacancy at the Department of Community Programs. Okay. This is an issue that you are having with clearly the Department of Community Services about, hold up.
Yeah, go ahead.
About an issue particular to your location. First of all, let me just announce that I just got a note saying that half the town is without power right now. So we have to deal with that issue. So let's just focus but let's just get through this meeting. I am not going to now reopen public comments because we did that. That was the reason I asked for it.
I'm hard of hearing. I got a disability. All right?
I virtually screamed, but
I don't hear you. I hear you now, though.
Okay, so I'm talking pretty loudly. But let me say this. I think this is not an issue for us as council to be discussing. This is an issue for you and the Department of Community Services to be discussing. Because I'm not sure what we as council can do.
Okay.
So if you tell me what the council can do, I'll listen to about that. Even though it's not the time to do it, I'm willing to listen to you going ahead and speaking. Even though the time has passed, I want to hear from you.
Okay, let's bring environmental protection in here. And I'll meet him tomorrow morning, and I'll bring him to the spots. Now, I'll bring them to all the spots. We're not gonna talk. I'm gonna prove to you what's happening down here is happening all over this town. And nobody's paying attention. Only taking care of certain people, right? We understand. I lived in this town 83 years, baby, 82. And I tell you, I know everything that goes on, right? And this is bad. What this guy's going through down on Edison Road, 32 Edison Road. I drive.
Okay.
This is right here in this paper, right here.
Right. So just to...
I feel sorry for that guy.
I will tell you something, okay? The Garcias came here to council twice, okay? At the second council meeting, I said to them, on behalf of council, that the Department of Community Services was going to test their line to see whether or not the responsibility was the city's, okay? The city tested their line. They said that they had clean water going through their sump pump. The city did a dye test just like they asked. And the dye test, which they were there present, my understanding is they were there present for the dye test, concluded that the city was not responsible. This is part of the issue. Sometimes people think, let me just finish,
Go ahead,
that it's the city's responsibility, and yet it is not. It's very unfortunate, I will tell you, my personal perspective, let me finish. My personal perspective, I think it is very unfortunate that they decided to go ahead and castigate blame to different people and entities before they knew all the facts. People shouldn't go do that. They shouldn't go ahead and start throwing stones and saying, oh, it's this person's problem, that person's problem. We showed them that it wasn't the city's problem.
You can throw all the stones you want, but I'm going to tell you something. When you go down that street...
Mr. Ryan,
how does this...
Stop pointing. You're being a little aggressive, so just...
What's that, sir?
He's not yelling at you, and you're pointing your finger at him. You don't need to do that.
Okay, I don't point the finger.
Okay? All right, thank you.
And I'm speaking loudly because you said you can't hear.
Edison Drive. You got 4 storm sewers. 2 are on the left, we'll say, over on that side. I'm going toward Morris Avenue, and you have 2 on the right, up from this guy's house. This guy's pumping the water this way, right? He's pumping the water back up into the storm sewer. The storm sewer's coming back. I'm saying the storm sewers. Now, we go down the hill. We go down onto Ryan Park. Now, this water comes down through here. If it could get there, it's not getting there. And there's 2 manholes here. And there's 2 manholes on Keating's property here, right? So this water, something's going down this guy's property. Because I was there when they put half of the stuff in this town, right? But I'm not going to argue. Just bring environmental protection here, then we'll go from there. Bring environmental protection in this town tomorrow morning, and I'll be there at 7 o'clock right here. That's all. Just call them up. I'll be here.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
And I'll find, and we're going to find him. And he knows I'm going to find him. And then I'm going to ask you, right, this guy that asked him, was he lying here? Where's he? He's not on this council, is he? This guy was here, the guy who asked you the question down here, were you lying about the sanitary sewer? Who was this guy? An imposter? This guy sat in this desk here. And he asked you, did you dump sanitary sewer into the thing about 5 or 6 months ago? You were all here. This guy sat here.
Sir, you're
Mr.
going to have to
Ryan,
take a seat.
Mr.
You know how to
Ryan.
address the public.
I don't...
We don't know. Mr. Ryan, I think we're finished here.
We're finished, yes.
We're done here.
That's enough. But bring that guy here tomorrow morning. He'll call me.
Mr. Ryan.
Sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be here.
Okay.
And I'll bring him to places, and I'm right. And I'm telling you right. Now I want to ask you another question.
No, Mr. Ryan.
No.
We will move on.
I want to ask you about this, something, the recreation. What's going on down there?
They're building...
No, I ain't worried about the building.
What
There's something, I
recreation?
was at a softball game up there Tuesday, and I was at a baseball game today. Somebody said something's going on down there.
The community center.
Yeah, well, I know that there's something else beside that. So maybe I'll never find out, but I know I found out already.
Okay, we're going back to the agenda.
Somebody's covering something up in this town.
Okay.
Somebody's covering up something, and not the sanitary sewer.
Okay, we're going back to the agenda. All right. Anybody have any comments on the declarancy of the vacancy? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to community programs, number 2, Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. This resolution appoints Carrie Baker-Ralph to the Community Programs Advisory Board. We thank Ms. Baker-Ralph for volunteering to serve on this important body, and I know that Mayor Radis thinks very highly of her. I move this resolution for adoption.
Second.
Oh, good. All right. Any comments or questions from members of council? Okay. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any new business? Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to comment on one item. I know, I'm not going to make a joke. I want to comment on one item in the consent agenda, which is the Wallace Road consent agenda item. So if you remember, residents of Wallace Road came and presented to us last year, and our city engineer, Aaron Traeger, has been working on this along with Paul Cascades for the whole time. We had a whole bunch of different options, and they put together a really nice plan to work on Wallace Road. And funding for the project was approved in the 2018 capital budget plan, and the work's anticipated to be completed by November 1st, 2019. So I'm really pleased that we're making a significant investment in repairing, and solving the problems for Wallace Road, and I thank our Public Works and City Engineering teams for making it happen, and I look forward to having it completed.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said. Any other comments or new business? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.